Atheist Nomads, episode 243. They're watching and listening. Should you be afraid?
It's like you're about to listen to includes cursing and talking about hoo-haws. Please be advised.
Welcome to another episode of Atheist Nomads. I am Dustin. Lauren is present, but doesn't have much of a voice, so she's not going to really be saying anything. But we have Mikey.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going good. And you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for asking. It's good to be here. It's good to be back.
Yeah. Now, Atheist Nomads has now moved on to not just being all the normal places you find podcasts, but in the new place you're starting to find podcasts, the Amazon Echo devices.
Oh, that's really cool.
So if you have one,
you are special. And
you are listening over a speaker right now, and it is within range, be warned, you will be subscribed, or you will get our skill. But if you aren't, when you get home, just say, Alexa, activate the Atheist Nomad skill.
It's a skill?
It's a skill, and then you can just listen to the show. It will remember where you are when you stop.
Oh, that's cool.
And so say, I have ours muted, so it wouldn't do anything right then.
Oh, that's fun.
But it will, it'll listen. You can pick episodes by number or by name. And it's there and it's available.
Oh, I love it.
So check it out.
See, and this is why we're going to be cyborgs someday.
Mm-hmm.
Because why do I have to be in my living room for this? Why can't I have this in my forearm?
Yeah.
At any point. Yeah. I get it. I'm always on board. I'm on board with modifying the human body because mine is horrible.
There are Alexa watches now.
Wow.
Okay. You can put it back on speaker now.
Yeah.
If you were. We're not going to say that word anymore.
Okay. What? Okay. Yeah. We don't want to say it for you. That's so funny.
The second one we have is going crazy now. Apparently,
they'll get smarter. They'll get more intelligent. This is a necessary step in training a species into intelligence.
But what this, I think, it segues into something I've wanted to talk about for a while, as this is something that I think about periodically, much to Lauren's annoyance, and I've been saving this to talk to Mikey
for the
about.
podcast. Oh, sweet! Because
Mikey is.
Giant geek?
Yes.
Yeah, I know, right? We're so into this.
Okay, so now that we've reached the point where everybody is connected 100% of the time, and we now have all these smart devices. We have the Echoes, we have
Asterix,
Apple HomeKits.
Everybody in a rich country that has access to. Yeah, I know what you mean.
If you are in the United States. Oh, and speaking of that, the Alexa skills, I believe, currently only available in the United States. Mm-hmm. It'll be available in Canada soon and the rest of the world shortly after that.
You got to give it to your best friend first. Canada, looking to you, buddy.
Or maybe it's the UK and then Canada.
Also a best friend. Yeah. They're our best friend that lives across the ocean that we still talk to all the time. And they say things differently than us, but we're wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. It's fine.
We've got Mother England and our little brother Canada.
They have old money. We have a lot of new money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Neither of us are perfect.
But what this all brings up is with these connected devices, and heck, even modern TVs. I've got a almost 10-year-old TV.
Mm-hmm.
It's not smart in any way. But there's a microphone almost all the time listening to you everywhere you go.
And isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Does that bother you?
A little bit.
How come?
Well, okay, let's start.
Because privacy is a relatively modern invention.
Well, it's a modern need. Because, say, 200 years ago, for somebody to know about your correspondence, they would have to actually break into your house. This is why...
It's not hard to do, though. I mean, glass is pretty easy to break.
Right, but this is why there is a problem currently going on with Supreme Court rulings and court rulings, unable to figure out what's email.
Oh, yeah.
What is that? Does that count as your papers?
We're just trying to codify communication for legal purposes, and it's going to be hard because it's not going to slow down or change. I'm really open about my life. I mean, that can backfire, but that's just the cost of living in the now. I started with a LiveJournal account back when that was a thing, and a lot of my writing style and just being open stems from that early expression of just being like, well, this is who I am. I switched to using my real name when MySpace comedy existed. Used to be called the Drunk Kitten online because I thought that was ridiculous. And why take social media seriously? But now I have to, because that's just part of the things that I do. So now I'm just open to the idea of people having access to the things I say, be it good, bad, or indifferent. Because I believe that we're going to instill socially the concept of understanding, empathy, and forgiveness. So if you are a racist when you're 16 and then when you're 45, you're running for president, I don't want anyone to be able to make the argument that you're the same person after 30, 50, 70, 80 years that you were during a bad chapter. And I want us to be able to go, yeah, she was a heroin addict for 6 years and a prostitute for 24, but that doesn't mean she's not qualified to be governor of the state of Maryland. It doesn't. If anything, she now has a level of understanding and empathy you don't have access to that might influence certain policy decisions. And if she can surround herself with the right people, that's our concept of government. And we're not there yet culturally. Not that I'm necessarily more evolved on it. I just think that's would be a better way to run the system.
Okay, so let's move off of government, because that's going to be, depends on what jurisdiction you're in. And
oh, yeah, it's going to be a mess.
It's a mess. It is evolving, and the wrong generation of people are figuring it out.
Oh, the people who won't have to deal with the consequences?
The people who don't understand it.
I know, they really don't. The internet is a series of tubes, after all.
Yeah, but so we're in Blade Runner.
Which one?
The original. We haven't seen the newer one.
All right, I won't talk about it.
But you look at like Blade Runner and a lot of the dystopian sci-fis.
Yeah.
Or the semi-dystopian near future sci-fis. One of the defining characteristics is personalized advertising.
I think it's really almost more,
we're there.
Well, I don't have a problem with that. As a matter of fact, I like the idea that my phone listens to me and then shows me advertisements for things I want instead of menstrual cups. I have no need for it. My girlfriend buys her own. I'll buy it for her if she tells me which one to get. Like, I live in the now. Why not have my robot recognize my face and go, hey, you know what you need? A new car.
But this kind of data gathering, like in one case, a teenage girl's father found out she was pregnant.
Right.
Because Target was monitoring her purchases on their shared rewards account or whatever it was, and then sending targeted advertising. Well, all the targeted advertising went to her dad.
That's actually fairly clever of him to put that together.
And she was looking up pregnancy stuff, and all of a sudden, he's getting targeted ads about pregnancy. Sat down with his daughter. Are you pregnant? Yeah, she was.
Well, children don't have have a lot of rights in our country. I'm not saying I think she should have body autonomy just as a growing human being who is going to be running that body for the rest of her life. Yeah, she should be in charge of it. But we agree as a community that adults should be involved in your decision making process to a certain weird young point in adulthood. Mm-hmm. And if she's still under that, maybe it's not so bad that worked out that way.
Now, in other cases, there's health data exchanges.
Yes.
If you're in the state of Idaho, all of your health data is being sent to the Idaho Health Data Exchange.
Okay.
Everything goes there. All providers in the state, if they subscribe to this,
they can access
That's all of the data.
I talk about all my shit publicly.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I think that's super useful. It has been problematic. St. Luke's, the largest employer in Idaho, is a hospital in downtown Boise, and they have been upgrading to a system called Epic, and there have been a lot of hiccups. But part of it is to integrate this system of greater accessibility for the system to know their patient, which I think is a natural infrastructure update for the system. I don't think data mining is inherently wrong. We just move over into the complicated system of what to do with the data. I don't think it should be used for political purposes because I don't think the average person is the time or energy to be very educated on the subject matter. Not that I know more. Yeah. It's just I at least know I've tried to learn. I know a lot of people don't. Like, it's not your fault that you don't know what libertarianism means if you've never read more than 6 books on it. I haven't. I could be wrong on tons of it, but I know I don't agree with most of it.
Now, one of the interesting things with data mining, and I had a fascinating conversation with a provider locally about the Idaho Health Data Exchange.
Yeah.
This doctor is panicked that this data is all going to be mined and used by the insurance companies, and that your health history at 20 is going to come and bite you in the ass at 50.
Yeah, it's because we allow the insurance companies. We allow the sharks to make the decisions in the aquariums and then bitch about the sharks eating fish.
Right.
Like, it's clearly that's the problem.
Now, actually, the part she's missing with it is the whole point of data mining is anonymity.
To a certain degree.
But it's not a lot of extra data. Big data, when you're dealing with big data, which is what she was talking about. Big data, the more data you have, the more anonymous the data is. Because you need to strip out irrelevant details.
Yes.
Like names.
And that is the point.
Identifiers.
Because we're dealing with biological computers at the end of it, the brain. But at the point when AI is making these decisions and communicating things directly to the operator or whatever, or if it's the AI process throughout, it'll just have your information and then make a decision determination and send you an email response, and no person will see it. That's the thing I think these people are scared of, is that the automatic no that you get normally from insurance companies will now just be fully automated, and there will be no human being having to deal with it.
The insurance company, if assuming Republicans get their way and insurance companies can do whatever the hell they want, you would have the scenario where an insurance company would be able to ask the AI, how much should we charge this person for their health
already
insurance?
Mostly do that with car insurance anyway.
We do.
They plug your number in and like, well, here's your rate, buddy.
The more mining is going on, and the area that seems most concerning to me is the sharing of this information across organizations.
Oh, yeah. Google, it's a resource to be bartered.
Google knows everything.
Yeah, and so does Amazon. That's why they put people out of business.
Yeah. Google has reached the point in knowing enough about you that they are developing or have developed. The device knows if it's on you.
Yeah.
And you can have it set to unlock based on it knowing it's you.
Mm-hmm.
For that to work, if it knows it's you in your pocket, Google knows how you walk.
Yeah, that's fine. I just don't. Here's the thing. Like, what sci-fi universe is there an evil application for my walking gait? Like, what does this eventually help? The robots design better shoes? Like, and it also knows I have diabetes? Well, just check my Twitter feed. Or you want to know about my mental health problems? Look at my Facebook rants. Mm-hmm. Like, any reasonably advanced intellect could put together my life just on the things that a normal person for someone much younger than me, behaves. Like, there are a lot of people in younger generations that aren't free with this information, but we're just giving it away. And now we're putting speakers in our house that can listen. And I feel the benefits to be gained after we get through all this nonsense, if we make it through all this nonsense, know what I'm saying, will be better. Yeah. Like, my ideal goal is one where we're a class 1 civilization with energy needs for everybody, where we can do basically control the weather, which means nobody starves.
The thing that gets me is I find it very concerning, the amount of data that is being gathered.
Yeah, I get that.
The amount that Google knows about me is creepy.
Yeah, because you're not used to it.
It is so creepy. The amount of Amazon knows about me is creepy.
And they will use it against you.
Now,
but you're warned about it so you can prepare yourself.
One thing that is kind of comforting with it is the fact that you can go and buy something on Amazon and they'll still send you ads about it.
Oh, yeah, it hasn't figured that out yet.
They're smart enough to know what you're looking at, but they aren't sharing your actual purchase information.
Yeah.
The Facebook has been trying to push on me, adding a Facebook pixel. A pixel is a little bit of code that will track. And so the concept is I embed the Facebook pixel into the Atheist Nomads website, and then it will know who likes the Atheist Nomads webpage.
So it'll just start data mining for you.
And start data mining and then give me all this information.
That sounds super useful.
It does.
Well,
I'm also not going to do it because, for one, I don't care about any of the information be gathered from that.
So fun to have. Like my original Bearded Atheist blog, I can't remember, that was on the Google system, was that Blogger or whatever, gives you a lot of free data, like what system people are using, what country they're in. Yeah. Like,
I get that for podcast downloads.
And it's basic data mining. It does no good for me to know which European country has my second largest percentage of readers over time. Like, I mean, it's not like I'm going to... But, I mean, if I were the type of content producer who would modify his stuff so it would be more Mongolian, then why not? Why not add Mongolian references for my Mongolian readers? It doesn't help. Or, I mean, it doesn't hurt anything to have that information. I think our core issue is that our system is built in a way where the information could be easily applied towards evil. I don't think them marketing things that I might want is a problem. I would rather they know I already have one, actually, because how is there an evil application for knowing I bought Blender? Like, if anything, it makes their business more efficient and less energy wasteful in not creating extra blenders if they know the actual call for blenders in the community.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, and an extremely intelligent society would run that way, because now you're not running your factories, you're not wasting resources, you're not creating. But we're not that place as a species yet. We're going through this growth spurt where old modes and ways of being that exist now will not work appropriately for the future we're designing for ourselves. So it's like the train tracks don't match up. This data mining is inherently just another resource or tool. We are, in classic human fashion, grossly misusing most of this information right away.
Oh, yeah.
So we're just burning through all of it like whale fat, not realizing there's only so much goodwill for data mining out there before it can be applied for good. And if we lose public interest in having this information accessible for our future, then we wait another generation or two before a group of people will have the will to be open about their lives again.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to create a generation of people on this planet who are terrified to be honest about who they are. That's not good for us culturally.
Yeah.
Not when we're social creatures. So I personally like to think that I'm looking at this long scope and I don't care. They can have all my information because I also have an unnecessary amount of confidence in the fact that I see through most of the scams and the Russian bots. Like, I'm just a naturally skeptical, negative person, and that shields me from the false optimism that tricks people into doing things.
Well, and I think where I've kind of fallen on it is, yes, it is concerning. It is something that we should probably, as a society, we need to think about more.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely needs to have
there needs to be
great
more
conversation.
However, you're a fool if you are sharing anything of actual consequence over normal digital communication means. You should never give out your social security number, credit card number, or anything else.
Yeah, we're still in a position where we should shield that information. We don't have the ability to ascertain who you are without that. But that is some archaic information storage in that it's on a hard copy in physical space. That's
now the
definitely
worst thing
last generations.
After the Experian hack, they know your name, date of birth, social security number, your last 15 addresses.
See, so
your
it's already worthless.
Yeah,
now you
they
can't
know everything about you.
Yeah,
everybody does.
This is the reason why eyeball scans or whatever the equivalent in the future will be popular, or a DNA scanner, even if it's just you put your finger up to the sensor. Because why not? Why wouldn't I want my phone to double check it's me before I buy $200 worth of something on my smartphone? Why not? It doesn't.
Yeah.
Why not? When I'm shopping, will there be sensors on the hand scanner or whatever you're using to shop in the future that just knows it's you, or your cell phone, which already knows it's you because it's scanning your heart the whole time you're holding it. So it just knows it's you. It knows your heartbeat. Yeah. Like, I'm totally on board for that future, because this old digital shit where you can only get a finite number of replacement social security cards. That is like 1700 bullshit that they have so much paper they can send to you. What happens if I run out? Like, what, are they gonna just not give me a social security number? It's ridiculous. In the future, it won't matter. We're just in this weird place where it does. So, yeah, it was like that guy who put his social security number on the van as the advertisement for his security, and then he got hacked a bunch of times. There's just no way for the tool to defend ourselves, to protect us from the tools people have to steal that information. We just need to have a system where once it's recognized that someone took $2,000 out of your account, they just give it back to you. Like, it's not the money. The money's imaginary. It's not real.
I have had a credit card number stolen before.
Yeah,
and my account was frozen while I was on a trip.
That sucks.
It took quite a while to get, because it was a debit card, to get all of the overdraft charges removed and get the money back. But I did get all $2,500 back. And
that's good. But what they should have done is given you access to your money immediately once they knew it was a fault.
Now,
they just don't want to absorb the cost temporarily that you couldn't afford to lose.
By the time that it all happened, the money had already been laundered, most likely to Al-Qaeda.
Yeah. And that's garbage. But I mean, the socioeconomic forces that create these pockets of issues for humanity are caused by greater demons than things like hackers and people that steal your information only exist because there's a call for it. Like if you remove 99% of the reason for those people to have that job, the only people who do it are the few disturbed individuals who won't do anything else. And that's a much smaller problem. You go from having to worry about everyone getting scammed to, oh yeah, there's scammers out there, but who cares? The banks eat it for 24 hours and they've made billions this year, so nobody gives a shit if they lose access to $2,500 for a weekend.
Now, I think where I've finally come to on the whole thing.
Yeah.
If you're getting a free service, you should know that you're the product, not the customer.
Yeah. Well, that's an education issue, right?
So if it's a free service, don't trust anything. Facebook, Gmail. Yeah, you shouldn't trust it because you're the product. If you want to be the customer, you need to pay. And even then, you probably shouldn't trust it. And if it's something really, really important, something that there's an actual chance that could harm you, identity theft risk, financial harm, go to that company's site, make sure it's encrypted, make sure it's actually their site, and do everything directly there. Don't do it across. Yeah, be smart.
I do expect people to do their own due diligence, but I also understand that a lot of people don't either have the capability, like they're not highly functioning in a digital age like you or I might be, where I even have huge blind spots on how to behave. There are definitely people out there who don't. They're just not native. My manager at my new job is 46. He's only 6 years older than me, but he doesn't use social media, and he didn't know how to copy and paste different things on a spreadsheet. That's all, not even right click. And the thing is the guy who had my job before me never showed him how to do that. That took me 2 seconds, literally just to show him the basic right click copy paste function, not even shortcuts, just here's the thing you can remember. It's literally right click. And then, but he didn't have the language or the expectation. Granted, 6 years for someone in the 70s can mean a lot because I was born right before the 80s. I think they call me an exennial, as in I have attributes of both.
Yeah.
But he's not. He is not that guy. He is so old school. He's basically a 50-year-old white dude. And he's open-minded for a 50-year-old white guy, but that doesn't mean that he knows how to handle this. So when he's forced culturally to get online, he's going to be so far behind me. And I'm only 6 years younger than he is. And I don't think that these guys are going to come in and they'll never be prepped for this. He's going to be going into the jungle unprepared, unwarned, and there's nothing that's guaranteed to look out for him, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Totally boned.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and because I think we have gone way too long on that.
Yeah. You wanted to talk about it here.
Yes, I did.
Here we are.
Let's go ahead and move on to news after a quick break.
Do it.
Atheist Nomads is proudly brought to you by listeners just like you. You can find out how you can become a patron at patreon.com/Atheist Nomads. That's patreon.com/Atheist Nomads. The Obama administration updated regulations to prohibit foster care agencies that are publicly funded and licensed from servicing only specific religions.
That's good.
That was good, yes.
We can get behind that.
Before that, they only prohibited discriminating on the basis of race or national origin.
Well,
so obviously that is a problem. So last week, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster issued an executive order to undermine that regulation by making it perfectly fine to discriminate on the basis of religion in his state. And
so ridiculous.
He has asked the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to exempt the state as well.
Wow. That's intense. It's not like things have changed. It's just that these are things these people always wanted to do. And then when they get the opportunity, they take their shot.
This is part of a large issue that I see that our country needs to fix.
Oh, yeah.
There are services that are being provided by religious organizations that are being provided by them because nobody else was doing it.
Well, it's part of the argument for the right is that private organizations like religion would cover the cultural need for the social security or the security blanket.
But at the point that the government's paying for it,
yeah,
why are we still having the church run it?
Just this, my argument for this has always simply been that it's because we haven't created a secular net yet and then forced us to use it. Like it's both of those things have to happen because you need it and you have to build it because right now, if you get arrested for drunk driving, there's a good chance the judge will force you to go to AA, which, while in many modified versions isn't necessarily religious, it was certainly created to be that way. And it's problematic for whatever reasons. And it does work for some people, but there's nothing else. So the people in AA, a lot of them don't like that we get court mandated people sent there. And when I was involved with the program, it was an issue because they just come there to get signed off and then they're problematic. But where else are they supposed to go? There's no secular design structure in society. And it doesn't have to be run by the government, but something needs to exist. And that's why these things are like that. A lot of these things, Salvation Army does some good, but they still don't like the queer community. And it's difficult because where else are certain people supposed to go if there's nowhere else to be? You can't judge someone for only eating at McDonald's if they're in a food desert.
Yeah. If the only foster care agency is run by the Catholic Church, because that's the only one that exists, and because that was already present and originally run by nuns, if the state didn't create their own, they just decided to start funding that when they took over providing that service.
It's cheaper and easier to do.
It is. They didn't have to create whole new infrastructure. I still think that's a huge oversight and that needs to be corrected. But in the meantime, if you're taking government funds, you can't fucking discriminate.
You shouldn't be able to, no. But you already explained how messy it already is. It's also not something we culturally believe in, that you have the right to step into private enterprise, whether you have to use them or not, and tell them how to run their business. That makes a lot of people feel really weird. So even when it's a church, or especially when it's a church, if you're in that church, it is hugely problematic for the people to decide what us, a religious organization, gets to do. And also, we're the ones that have been saving all these children for hundreds of years, so maybe you could shut the fuck up about it. And I mean that with all due respect. God bless you. I get where they're coming from, but I agree with you. We need to have both either a fix where they're not allowed to discriminate, which is always going to make them feel weird.
Yeah.
Because it's just not
messy.
Yeah. Or take it away from them.
Yeah.
I think you can have your own thing. You just don't get any public funding.
I would actually go a step further. I have been thinking about this a lot. I am not going to say when or where, but I have been thinking about this a lot. I think the concept of religions doing things other than religion is archaic. It all exists because in the Middle Ages, there were two governments. There was the church government and there was the state government. At that point, the king's government. So you had the Pope and the king. And some things were handled by the king and some things were handled by the Pope. And you had these two systems developing. And the king mostly took care of law and order and military stuff. And the Pope and his underlings, the bishops, mostly took care of everything else. That's the Middle Ages. We aren't in the Middle Ages anymore.
It's not a feudal system. No, society is definitely an old house you keep building wings onto instead of fixing the old ones. And it's weird that we have to go through this old system because it's mostly functional. And then the problem that we're running into is the damage that's done where it's not functional. And the decision-making process is an older, archaic one. But you and I both know challenging the ways that, those groups think is something that has to be done in a court of law or with the infrastructure itself. Because we can't win an argument with people who think they're saving people from eternal damnation. You just can't find middle ground.
It is completely funded by the government.
Right.
Everyone they are dealing with, the children, are wards of the state.
Yeah, I say fire him and give the job to somebody who's not going to make a determination through that kind of filter.
And if you take wards of the state and you give them to a, let's say, Baptist organization that is going to specifically place these children with good Baptist families to indoctrinate them in the Baptist church, how is that not an establishment of religion?
Oh, it is. And it 100% is. It just,
hospitals and Canada has a totally different situation. But here with hospitals, totally different situation. But with these, it's a government function with government wards of the government. And it is definitely, I don't see how it's not unconstitutional. Let's go ahead and move on.
Yep.
Bill Dix is a married father of 3.
Bill.
And until last week, he was the anti-gay family values Iowa state Senate majority leader.
I don't even need to know the rest of the story to know what happened. If that's how you're introduced, there's only one thing that happens next.
In 2006, he campaigned for U.S. Congress. He lost to a Democrat.
Yeah, it happens.
But he campaigned on his championing, his shepherding, and co-sponsoring of the bill that would get Iowa's same-sex marriage constitutional amendment put through.
Got to rally up the base.
And he campaigned on a national no same-sex marriages between one man, one woman national amendment. That he lost, but that was his main campaign thing. Now, for years on this show, it was a thing that if there's a sex scandal and it was a Democrat, it was a guy doing something with a woman he probably had some kind of power over. If it was a sex scandal with a Republican, it was usually with a dude with a dude, often in an airport bathroom.
And it's always a family values guy because those are the stories that are salacious that we want to talk about.
What's kind of nice is that there is actually a trend that has been coming up with asshole Republican family values bigots not being conflicted closet cases.
Yeah.
Bill Dix, he resigned after getting caught on video kissing a lobbyist in a Des Moines bar. Now, the part I find the most concerning with that isn't the fact that he was kissing a woman other than his wife. I couldn't care less.
It could be polyamorous. I don't know.
That's between him and his wife. He was kissing a lobbyist.
So bizarre.
Somebody whose job was to sway his opinion on policy.
Some movie level shit right there.
That is where the problem actually is.
I agree. I mean, no, the balance of power is super important, and we need to recognize it. I'm just always wary in these conversations of taking away the autonomy of the woman involved. I'm assuming, because he was a public figure and she was a lobbyist, that she knew his marital status and political stances. This was weighted decisions that she was involved with. Whenever you kiss someone in public, you have to be aware that people are there and cameras are there and phones exist. So this was something either that she decided willingly or was somehow not good at her job, which are two things. I don't care about the impropriety. The only reason this is salacious is these family values douches that always make the loudest noise when they trip. Like if you were just a regular guy, I'm not to address all of it, but even as a young person, I wasn't never upset with Bill Clinton's infidelities because I read history books and I just know that a lot of men in power are trash. Like it's just, I mean, most dudes are pretty garbage, but they've had the worst of it, the worst upbringings, the worst toxic masculinity, the worst ways of viewing the world, plus the filter of being a person in power. You view the world differently. We already know that. If you're not a sociopath, it definitely gives you sociopath colored glasses you can put on. And in that case, a man who works really hard is going to, if he's going to have infidelities with people in his space. So since I cannot speak because I'm not involved with the balance of power within the relationship, we know he was in a powerful position over her. But I never wanted to say that she didn't have any agency over it. And the only time I would ever do that is when the woman herself says, and this is like the Hollywood Me Too type stuff, is in these situations, these men are often, you have to watch me masturbate or you're not getting a job. Like that's rapey. Like that's not just a woman sleeping with a married dude who has power over her, where I'm going to give her some credit for that.
This one, my mind was going to the opposite, that she was using sexuality to sway him on a vote.
It's possible. It smells like it could be, which is in itself a reason not to do it. Like it's the same reason why we don't have adult professors sleep with adult students. It's not that, it just seems like unethical space is so large next to all of that it's like, can you guys at least wait till you're not in that relationship? It's like most places don't let you date your boss. Not that you're not capable. It's just that, but it looks weird. And now you're bothering everyone else because we don't know if your significant other got that job promotion because they're your date or because they're better than us.
Right.
Like, I mean, and you can never answer it because there's always going to be doubt. So to that, it seems weird, but I don't know. I mean, we just need to get to the point where we are no longer allowing the morality of things like that to be as influential in the political discussion.
Oh, the one line I want to always exist is if you're in elected office, you should never, ever, under any circumstances, be allowed to have any kind of sexual contact with lobbyists.
I could get over that. I think that could be a transfer of
there
goods
is so huge.
It's difficult.
A lobbyist can't give you a gift. I don't think they should be able to give you a blowjob either.
It's a pretty good line. At least you know what you're going to run for office on. I'm behind that. I think it's a good ethical argument. You shouldn't. Yeah. It puts you in it does. The appearance is not there. And a lot of politics is how things are framed.
And he resigned, which I think was the right decision.
Well, he doesn't have a lot of choices, does he?
But he resigned because he was cheating on his wife, and that is the wrong reason. He didn't resign because he was in the middle of a conflict of interest with a lobbyist.
I think in today's culture, it's actually the better choice politically. Like, if you were my guy, I'd be like, tell him you're quitting because you cheated on your wife. We all know you've been cheating on your wife for 20 years. But we're going to say that because they're going to forgive you for that because voters are the worst. Instead of you go, oh, I'm sorry, I compromised my values. Don't say that. Be like, I cheated. We give guys a pass on that all the time, especially if you're powerful or famous. I was just doing that a little bit myself. The idea being that we understand the power dynamics and the accessibility means accessibility to your trash side is there. So while I want you to have the moral integrity not to take advantage of those situations, for instance, I never had sex with an inmate when I was working in a prison. A lot of them were really hot. Now, granted, they were pretty much all straight, but I did know a lot of women who did. Now, that's a power dynamic. That's technically rape, and you get persecuted for it. But it happened a lot to women I knew because life is messy and complicated, and you're not allowed to do that for the super obvious reasons and more. Yeah. But they still did it. And I don't necessarily think that there's anything necessarily wrong with that person. It's just that humans over time will make bad decisions. But yeah, it is weird. I think my main issue is that we're still allowing family values to be part of the conversation when that doesn't mean anything. Right. It's just like, well, what does that mean? I think the bigger issue here is the fact that it was a lobbyist. I'm with you on that. I think that's inappropriate. As far as should he be in office, the bigger issue is the lobbyist. He is also a fucking ridiculous hypocrite. Oh, but that's pretty common for these guys. They're running on what'll make them win, I think, and maybe their group believes that, and it's hard to argue against your paycheck. Moving on to the next story, Stephen Hawking has passed away. Yeah, he died at the age of 76. Way exceeded his shelf life. And while this is sad and tragic, when he was diagnosed at 22. He was given a few years. Yeah, I know, right? The fact that he made it past 25, the fact he finished his PhD is amazing. Yeah, I've seen some of the biopics. They like to gloss over a lot of his personality flaws. I'm not a guy who venerates heroes. Yeah. I think it was beneficial to humanity that he survived and that despite being a giant asshole a lot of the time, he did a lot of good things for humanity. I think, whatever. I think he managed to exceed normal human potential by quite a bit. And we as humans are impressed because we see very obvious reasons for his struggle to not do so. Yeah. It would be easy to see ourselves in a situation and get a death sentence at a young age and to just party or escape or become a depressed asshole until we died. He did some of those things to an extent, like a lot of people. He just happened to exceed expectations and increase humanity. And we don't always capture these super geniuses. We leave most of them poor in other countries. Or if they're born in this country, we don't give them the resources to manifest. This guy managed to be born in a time, at a time, in a place where he could become this person. And it's been better for us. I think the story of him really reinforces the narrative that we need to find the hymns that are invisible right now. And that his challenges and advantages were great and that we should appreciate what he was able to do. But as a human being, we could do better. Yeah. But there's also the whole thing that we shouldn't have heroes. Well, I mean, there's good and bad because you need them in the story because that's how people know they can kill dragons. You need heroes in stories. We need to stop having heroes in life because they will always disappoint. We shouldn't meet your heroes, but that's a lesson you learn as a grown-up. We've reached the point with... Just don't meet your heroes, kids. With won't work out. A throwback to what we were talking about at the beginning. Yeah. In the connected world where everything is public,
Richard Dawkins was an awesome person until he got Twitter.
Well, no,
and
he was
then
always
turned into an
garbage.
asshole.
We just knew what he was thinking then.
Right. Because heroes will always disappoint you. Because nobody is going to agree with anyone 100% of the time.
Well, I mean, if your thoughts aren't very complicated, it's a lot easier to get overlap.
Anyway, yeah, Stephen Hawking, he did amazing things for theoretical physics.
And I've read some of his stuff. I'm casually into physics.
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough to understand. That's not that part of my brain. I don't comprehend, but I like all the generalist stuff. You know, I like a lot of his work. Clearly, at this point, everybody's heard about some of the things he did for black hole science and evolving our understanding of nature, and just
Hawking radiation
is a thing. He got a thing named after him. That doesn't happen very often. I mean, and it's high level. It's not Planck, but it's up there. Like, we got a guy who's going to be in books for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's interesting to exist in a time when you can recognize that parts of history die off. Like, one of the interesting things about living in the information age is how cognizant we are of where we are in space-time. Whereas before, things weren't advancing very quickly because it was mostly just a farming agrarian systems.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the last several generations, we have gone from hand-cranked machines to having robots orbiting planets and leaving the solar system. It is way too fast for anybody on that timeline to keep up. Like, if you were a god or a watcher or some deep old one watching our planet, you would literally watch us be what we were for 100,000 of years, and then in 10,000 years develop society, 15,000, and then literally go to space in like 3 or 4 generations.
Yeah.
It'd be like you'd blink cosmically, and then we'd be on Mars. And it's weird to think from our perspective of living it in our time that we would even remotely have a grasp on any of this shit. And having people like Hawking in our history and in our time, we are in a very unique perspective where we got to watch Isaac Newton live and die.
All right, time for another break, and then the rest of the news. We love hearing from our listeners. You can email us at contact@atheistnomads.com, tweet us at atheistnomads, send us a message on our Facebook page at facebook.com/atheistnomads, or better yet, call us and leave us a message at 541-203-0666. We might even play it on the show. You can also help us out by leaving us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcast directory of choice. A new Barna Group study has found that 6% of the U.S. population identifies as atheist.
Yeah!
Not too long ago, there was only 3%. But more interesting than that is the generational breakdowns. They found that baby boomers to have the fewest atheists at 5%, elders and Gen Xers, and I haven't heard elders used before, but anybody older than a baby boomer.
Oh, you're old. That's ageist, but whatever, you're old.
Anybody older than baby boomer and the Gen Xers averaged out at 6%, which is average. Millennials a little bit higher at 7%. Generation Z came in at 13%.
Huh.
The kids are all right.
You know, how much of that, though, do you think is literally it being more okay to be an atheist?
I think it's a big factor. Especially since, but I think that is more explained for the other groups other than Generation Z, because
the non-declareds are still a huge percentage, and I think we have most of those. Because
I don't think we do.
Okay, here's the way I look at it, and I don't know if this will change your mind. Is the light on or off? There's not a dimmer. When you're a theist, you either believe or you don't. My point of view is the light's either on or it's off. What we have is anyone who has any light on, they don't want to say their light is off because a darkened room is considered suspicious. So our problem is that you and I live in a darkened room, which, whatever for this metaphor, but we are okay with saying the light's off. Other people who have their light turned off 98% are like, well, my light's not off. It's still dark in that corner over there because I'm keeping hope alive for my mother. That person's an atheist. They only go to church to make their family happy. They don't really believe. What I do is I consider everyone an atheist up until about 50%. Like,
okay, but these aren't the people we're talking about. We're not talking about.
Yeah, I think most of us are atheists.
We're not talking about the 30% that are, or 20 to 30% that are.
You're talking about declared
not
atheists.
Religious affiliated. We're talking about the 6% that are explicitly identify as atheists.
Yeah, I think it's way too low.
Well, ignore that.
Yeah.
That number used to be 3%. I think the greater acceptance is because elders 6% of people older than the baby boomers are identifying as atheists.
It's not bad.
They didn't before.
Yeah.
5% of baby boomers 10 years ago did not identify as atheists.
Were you okay? This was years ago, but I was doing I was part of the Atheist 4th of July. Here in Boise, the Idaho Atheists actually get spot in the 4th of July parade most years. And years ago, I went to one. And some of the elders in our society, which there are not many, as you can tell from our numbers, there are a few of them, mentioned specifically the difference in attitude. Because as I'm walking, and this is, I want to say, most of a decade ago, 7 years ago, I'm walking through the streets of Idaho, Boise, Idaho, and I see more people who clap when we march. Granted, still moms stopping their kids from clapping for us, still parents, people looking at us disapprovingly. But there are more people who are giving us the thumbs up on that secret thumbs up, or that like, hey, or a couple, maybe a young couple with a dog on the side of the road were clapping. And it was a visual representation of the sphincter of society being like, I guess you can clap for those jackasses. Now, here we are most of a decade later, further into the information age, younger people who've grown up with the access to all that. And now I feel like the sphincter is mostly relaxed because of our age. We're just younger now. Like a lot of these older people who were taught from the word go that they couldn't be atheists are now either relaxing themselves, which is going to reflect some of that number, or aren't reinforcing that with younger people. So now we have people who are both exposed to all this information and live in a culture that just doesn't care as much.
Now, this, I think, also ties in with, because the more interesting number to me out of all of this is Gen Z. 13%, almost double as many atheists as millennials, and well more than double than everybody else.
I spent a lot of time with these people, and they're fantastic.
These are the kids.
But they're more intersectional. They're more aware of power balances and structures. I think they have a greater intrinsic knowledge of the differences in cultural politics because they're more into communication and expression than previous generations because of the accessibility of that information. So they are just more open to the idea that people disagree, which means they're less judgmental. I like to maintain optimism because I hang out and skew young in both my behaviors and attitudes. But a lot of that comes from me replicating what they do. I immerse myself into now culture. I expose myself to new music, new thoughts, new art, new ideas, new stories. I track young artists. I support young creatives. I hired a young artist who might not even be old enough to go to do the next poster for the Atheist Show, and it's fun. Nice. Yeah. It's cartoonish. The main one is a hand holding a flamed match, and then the atheist comedy experience is inside the flames itself. And it's just a simple thing, but this is only done because my generation, and granted, I definitely skew millennial on this. I was exposed to a lot of this stuff and support when I was younger. So my will to push that down, going to like talking about like parents like Emma Arnold, the way she treats her children are the results of how our generation behaved and wants and our views. And then it's just the cumulative pressure of optimistic viewing towards a more progressive society, in a lot of ways, more secular society, where we actually see these are the fruits of that. We're seeing children grow up being respectful. And
then add to it the pace of cultural development with the internet.
Which is unprecedented. We don't have a way of measuring it right now.
Meme was a concept that Richard Dawkins coined in the 70s.
Even though he said it wrong.
But that was coined in the selfish gene as just kind of a model of looking at how
patterns replicate within humanity.
And now a meme is just some silly picture with some text on it.
Oh, it's a quicker reoccurring thing with the same thought. It's the same note played faster.
But when you look at memes now, it's amazing what can happen because, like, you look at the fact that black people have been getting killed by the cops as long as there have been cops.
Well, way before that, even.
Or even before that.
Call them cops.
And you add the internet and social media, and a no-name person with no standing in society can take a video using a recording studio in that person's pocket or purse, upload it, get it shared, and change the world.
Strange,
that's never been possible
or
before.
Not, which then creates a greater problem. When a licensed cafeteria worker with a legal gun gets killed by the police, we start to get more what we would call, but has always been rational reasons for being upset. Part of the problem of gatekeeping emotions that exists in our culture is us trying to have a compass on when it's okay to be upset. This idea that being offended is somehow a weakness. When I don't have a problem addressing any form of offense because we can objectively discuss why things bother you. I always try to skew towards the empathetic. In this situation, we finally have a world where the powerless has power. For instance, I recently had a run-in with my old job at Whole Foods because of my hair color. Despite there being a universal policy of acceptance, we allow the store managers in this company to determine what is acceptable culturally. The problem I had is we had some gender bias on expressionism because while I am definitely a cis male, I am bisexual, occasionally I identify as pansexual, but my gender expression is fluid in that I wear women's clothes because like many performers before me, I don't consider them women's clothing. I consider them clothing in the women's section. So like I'm wearing bright orange Chucks right now, which I bought in the women's section, but Chucks are non-binary. So we know factually that if you go to their website, they just give you a shoe size and you figure it out because that's how shoes should be sold, because that's a more progressive way of looking at it. Whereas I got in trouble for having a pink hairstyle that they made me get rid of.
A Canadian psychiatrist who ran a gay conversion clinic has been found guilty by the Ontario medical regulator of sexually abusing 2 patients.
That's so gross.
He's also going to face a hearing before the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada.
It sounds so much more serious when you put Royal in front of it.
Oh, yeah.
Unless it's Royal Cola. And get out.
So as the regulator found, the patients, quote, thought that the sexual activity was part of the therapy.
Did they, though?
And
did they really?
An attempt to cure them of homosexuality by engaging in the acts rather than fantasizing about them.
Fuck this gay right out of that butt.
And that he, quote, engaged in mutual masturbation and oral sex with 2 of the male patients on different occasions during therapy sessions and once had anal intercourse with one of them in his office.
This'll help.
Uh-huh.
Oh, man. I think it's just, to me, that's just a case of a poor, unfortunate person who had been forced into believing that they weren't gay, being forced to help, quote unquote, help people who are gay.
No.
And then still being gay and then doing gay things.
This guy's in his 70s. When he started his practice, homosexuality was considered a diagnosable
it was a mental
condition.
That's fucked up.
It hasn't been in over 30 years.
It doesn't seem like that's been long ago. That's not long enough.
The weird thing that kind of goes through the mind is, okay, this is somebody who, he was gay, thought that was a psychological disorder. So he went through all the training to become a psychiatrist. So medical school and residency and fellowship and all of that, and decided to focus on fighting his own gayness by trying to help other people who are gay.
It's easily to paint this person as a tragic figure, isn't it?
And ended up using it, as seems to be the norm for any kind of gay conversion stuff. Yeah, there's a whole lot of gay sex that happens.
Well, I mean,
when you get a bunch of gay people together trying to, suppress their feelings. No, that's there. It's real. People are who they are. They like what they like.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
And they're going to have sex with who they're attracted with, assuming everybody, preferably if everybody else is a consenting adult.
Yeah.
And not taking advantage of a power imbalance like this fucking asshole.
It's just hugely problematic when we take gay conversion stuff at its core is hugely weird. And you can only even have gay conversion therapy after you build social structures that are as fucked up as the ones where we're reinforcing those kinds of stereotypes onto people's lives. You have to be devoid of the empathy to listen to or try to understand the person that you're trying to help. It's so fucked up. And then this guy is just, he fits right into how fucked up the rest of this horror show is. And this dude has been convinced. He's, I bet you almost anything. He actually believes all those defenses. He believes on some level that he's helping them. Or he's so fucked up that this is all he's got left. There's just no positive way to look at the story for anybody involved. And it is the result and the manifestation of a broken society where the other, in this case, typified by their attractions to others, are being ostracized and treated differently. And that itself is problematic. Yep. Never mind the silliness of who gives a shit who you fuck when you're a consenting adult kind of thing.
And if you look at the gay conversion, movement.
Yeah.
One of the leading trends in that right now are leaders in that movement not only coming out as actually gay, divorcing their wives because, it turned out it doesn't work, and leaving Christianity to
just
live their lives.
Well, I mean, if your religion forced you to be somebody you were not and then made you into someone for most of your good fucking years, I think you'd be a little devoid of understanding afterwards. Yeah. There is a lot of religion that's not out there trying to fuck your shit up like this, but there is a percentage of, in our culture, Christianity, that definitely focuses on curing gay people. And you can't get past any of that conversation with them. Like, what's the cure? What's the gay? Like, they don't even identify a spectrum, bisexuality, erasure. And that is, bisexuality is literally just not being binary. And then it gets complicated after that. But there are a lot of people who are attracted to the opposite sex, just a little, not enough to like do anything about it. But we demonize even those thoughts. Like, our society is so warped that we just can't be honest about it. And to create this kind of scenario where a guy would spend his whole career fixing people with something that he's obviously fixated with is just a systemic issue and something that definitely needs to stop happening.
Now, Linda Harvey of the Mission America organization,
sounds important,
has figured it all out.
Of course.
And she spoke at the Bringing America Back to Life convention.
That's not creepy at all.
That's like full-on buzzword TM.
That's undead business right there.
She figured out why we have gay people. And I have a few clips here.
Oh, come please.
The intersection of these two movements, homosexuality and the pro-abortion movement, you may have thought these were separate issues, but they are foundationally connected. One has to, first of all, consider the horrifying possibility that this complete sexual and human identity meltdown could be an aspect of God's judgment on us for aborting millions of our children.
Okay, so we have gay people because of abortion.
I love her argument, which is God's punishment for us murdering babies is for people being born unsure of who they want to fuck. Like, it's the most passive-aggressive bullshit God could possibly pull. We're going to wait 20 years, and when these babies grow up, they're going to fuck each other. Not that way, the other way. And that's a real problem.
Oh, and she thinks about it a lot.
Well, that's her job.
As you can tell.
They involve the waste functions of the body, or empty relations with spilled sperm, or substitutes for the male organ. You get the idea.
She thinks masturbation is a sin. I used to belong to this part of Christianity. They're the best. And spilled seed. I could literally impregnate every woman physically. I can impregnate every woman in this country. What is it, every 2 weeks? Like, you can lose all your semen and it's not a waste. Shit, we got buckets of this stuff.
Okay, so she spelled it out as anal sex.
Gay sex creates aborted babies.
Oral
How
sex.
the fuck do you jump to that? All these lesbians are creating the most abortions. That's the important thing to talk about. Never mind, it's the only 100% effective way to avoid birth is to have women fuck each other.
Or men fuck each other.
Yeah, but women can't, right now, women can't get pregnant without dudes, and dudes are the worst. So if we just teach all the women to be lesbians, we're going to reduce that abortion rate to like 0.
Yeah, yeah. But she actually has figured out how they're all just the same thing.
Oh, good.
Death is the central driving force for the abortion movement, the death of a person. Death and the absence of new life are also the connection in among the LGBT movement. Without the rejection of heterosexual norms, husbands and wives who create babies, the LGBTQ movement has no reason to exist.
I love the old "you're defined by us" argument. I don't know what the Latin phrase is, but I need to learn it. Listeners, please tell me. Mikey Pullman, message me directly. Tell me what this means. For real, though. So we only exist in the LGBT. And okay, so in the basis, in reality, what this is it's a problem of codification. We as humans want to have labels for other things to help us communicate with each other. Problem with how our brains work. And as those terms change, because the language itself evolves and creates and bounces off our thoughts and evolution as a species, the quote unquote typified normal way of looking at things easily gets insecure and gets upset at the evolution of other modes and ways of looking at things. And it's not that things like asexuality or pansexuality or being a trans person have never existed, because they have historically. We can see this throughout recorded human history, but that we're defined through common culture because the popular culture is the way that language was created.
Yeah. Now, the thing I want her to explain is ancient Greece.
Well, I mean, that was military stuff, but I doubt she knows anything about reinforcing military.
It wasn't all military. A lot of it was just your apprenticeship or your friends, or
if you grew up in a world where the gender of the person that you were having sex with mattered less, then you would be more likely to experiment because there's no negative connotation. If you're not attracted to the same sex, then you wouldn't. But also rarely would, except for like arranged marriages and what have you, would you be expected to perform. And it's not like we've ever created a culture where people's exploration in sexuality and gender and all that has ever been completely healthy or normal. So the way that we're viewing it now, she wants to take us all the way to the point where the heterosexual sex and the creation of life are sacred, and that the creation of life is the pinpoint for why we're here. And everything else is secondary. And the opposite of life to her is death. So for her, because everything is very simple in the way she's explaining the world, if you're not worshiping the sacredness of creation of new life, you are automatically worshiping death.
What's interesting is one of the things that she's kind of missing there is, Lauren and I have made a baby.
Yeah, that happens.
Most of the sex we had.
Most.
The chance...
her face right there, you guys, that was the greatest face.
The chance of her getting pregnant was as close to zero as possible.
Well, yeah, because you guys probably took measures until you were ready to have children. Like adults.
Which means...
grown-up stuff,
all of
guys.
That might as well have been spilled seed.
It turns out if you let a woman decide when she can have kids, she makes better decisions than if you don't let her choose.
Right. And not...
You guys...
Even straight people who have children, the breeders.
Yeah, you guys.
Most of that sex is not about creating life.
Yeah, they just paint sex differently than it's used in nature or by human experience. And humans are nature. We know how humans behave sexually, and it's a complicated mix. And the conversation is merely evolving now, where we're just trying to identify what people actually do or how people actually treat sex, which is frequent and often. I have worked in the service industry, restaurants, retail, bars, and I will tell you something. Young people never stop having sex with each other. Individuals might, but as a group, nah. When I was working at the Olive Garden, when somebody got herpes, and then a bunch of people got herpes because they can't keep it in their pants. Was that the Olive Garden? Anyway, one of those, or was it the Cheesecake Factory? Anyway, one of those chains, because young people can't be stopped. Because here, I'm 40, and I know better than to get involved with people that are 23. But I was 23 and I didn't know better. And I made a lot of mistakes and a lot of walk-ins where people's foods were stored. Like, this is just, and if you can't stop yourself from having sex when there's food in the refrigerator, there's nothing. Yeah. We are merely trying to evolve to where we have healthy conversations and where I know on our slice of the internet where we want to educate people so that they can have healthier conversations as they age. So that your child can grow up in a world where they can communicate accurately about how they feel. And we can just try to be as sensitive and empathetic as we can for that position so that when your child is an adult, they can be the best version of that adult, despite any weaknesses or sicknesses or challenges that they have as they age, because we just want to optimize their lives because we care about them. And this point of view that they have isn't necessarily a worship of death. I think it's the actual opposite of life, which is intentional suffering. Her whole point of view is to force people into a rigid worldview where things make sense to her without any acknowledgement of the empathy or the opinion that somebody might disagree with the right way to be. Because she has a rigid moral compass without the ability to look outside of it.
Now, historically, this is really fascinating because You had, in the Middle Ages, the general concept was men had sex with women to make babies, and men had sex with men to have fun. That was the norm throughout the entire medieval period.
So funny.
By the time you got to the Victorian era, the men having sex with men and having fun all had to be removed from the equation. And somehow Christianity absorbed the Victorian morals and the concept of sex being for fun. That's bad.
Yeah, a big part of the problem with the Christianity in the States is they frequently find fun to be immoral. And the versions of fun that they either try to create themselves or they try to like harvest into their society are reduced versions of how we handle it in the outside.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, you know, if the secular world, yeah, Christian rock is an excellent example where there actually were some, like, I listened to Jars of Clay a lot in the 90s. They were actually a fun band, and I don't necessarily think they were derivative of much of anything else, any more than any music is. But it was marketed specifically to Christians, and most Christian music is not the best version of what's out there. There's a lot of noise made in the 90s when Amy Grant decided to go mainstream. It didn't change the context of her music much. She was just able to talk about her relationship more instead of just Jesus. She still put out a lot of Jesus music, but all she did was she stopped being rigidly Christian.
Yep.
Because a lot of the creatives stayed there. And part of the problem that they have culturally is that they're so focused on rigid ways of thinking and being. And this is a problem conservative movements have always had, is that a lot of the revolutionary and evolutionary thought it takes to evolve your scene into the next survivable method comes from the ability to think outside of your box. And old modes and ways of being are not going to work. The Christian churches that are down there in Pride and are celebrating Pride community with us are the Christian churches that queers will join. It is not the ones telling us that we're not people or that we're going to go to hell. It's the one with a nice lesbian pastor who can look me in the face and introduce me to her partner for 20 years. I'm not going to be a Christian, but if I were going to, I would much rather trust that woman with the wisdom of how to guide my life than some straight dude who thinks I'm going to hell no matter what I do. And that's just an evolution. So the more conservative the movement is, it can be effective. For instance, the longest running society on the planet right now is China, and they are not progressive in a lot of ways, but they're at least evolving. When capitalism became popular, they took some time, but they started adding some capitalist elements into owning a private property. It's not ideal for human, but they do have one of the most successful models for running a human society if we measure longevity in the equation, whereas our form of democracy barely makes it to 200 on average.
Oh, and if you if you look at modern China, they appear to have the best way of running a society with over 1 billion people.
Well, I mean, how many people get to measure that? No control groups.
It's them in India.
Well, I mean, yeah, everyone's doing the best they can. And obviously humans being flawed and having issues.
All right. A crucified Stormtrooper was on display as the centerpiece of a Stations of the Cross art exhibit at a London Anglican church.
It's hilarious.
Once
like Buddy Christ.
Yeah. Once church members saw this, they got upset.
Shocking.
This is London. It caused a, quote, controversy.
Controversy.
The artist explained it as, quote, I like to think of it as a new hope, such as in the Star Wars film, or the new Star Wars film.
He was trolling.
Where John Boyega rebels against the dark side and fights for something good. He was also hoping to raise awareness about his brother, who has been missing since 2003, and raise some money.
So it's a black Stormtrooper. Boyega's black.
Presumably. Yeah. Yep. And he was trying to raise some money to help with finding his brother.
It's not art unless you feel something.
So after church members got upset, a priest arrived to investigate, and he met with the artist and the upset parishioners, and they all agreed to move the Stormtrooper to the front of from the front of the church to the back of a hallway.
It's a compromise. That's so funny. I'm going to let an artist do something with a cross in front of my church and then shockingly get upset when it doesn't work out for me.
Yeah, what the fuck?
It's hard to tell with artists how much of that is language he's using to manipulate the situation, because art is done through a lot of filters, and how much of it was his pure intention initially. Being a creative person and knowing a lot of creative people, I know that we sometimes have the tendency to be insubordinate just because it affects things, which art, right?
Yeah.
So once you start calling yourself an artist, I start being a little more suspicious of your true motivations because, yeah, sure, creation, but even creation itself is sometimes just the reason we did things. There's a lot of reasons you could look at a Stormtrooper on a cross and feel a lot of ways about it. I think it makes it a good artistic project. And then I get why you would move it, because who needs the hassle at the end of the day? Plus, he already got the message out, which is fun.
Oh, he actually got the message out far further because it got in the news.
No, we're talking about it now.
Yeah, we're talking about it in art. Fucking Idaho.
It's art. He did his job. I don't think it challenges too many preconceptions. And I mean, it wouldn't have been effective, I believe, if he didn't use something that was so mainstream and instantly recognizable. You know, and there's been the art installations, like, I don't know if you've seen this floating around the internet of like the young child being crucified on the back of this school shooter. There's a whole set that's out there. I've seen it a few times where they're all representative of people who the cost of lives. So like they had a small brown child being crucified on the back of a soldier, kind of stuff that makes you go, oh shit, like kind of stuff. And that kind of thing fits within that general, our worship towards media and what we consider to be culturally important, things like Star Wars. The religious people frequently feel like we worship those stories more than the ones they want us to worship because they're better. I'd rather watch a young brunette woman save the universe than another white dude.
And for our final story, we have an update on retired Boise priest Thomas Fosher. Additional charges have been filed, and his bail has been raised from $250,000 to a full $1 million.
So this is the guy who had the sex stuff in his place,
the child porn.
But that's the worst thing he did. He owned child porn.
Okay, I have to jump in.
Please do.
Not only did he have his own child porn, but a lot of it depicted the death and mutilation of children, including infants.
All right, so he's also into snuff films, but child snuff films, which that's pretty much the bottom of the ethical bucket.
We're talking gruesome, like the sex, the crimes against children on the internet, whatever it's called, task force. Their response like to task force was that this is some of the most fucked up shit they've seen.
Yeah, even they were like, whoa. And they've seen shit.
Wow. The torture and murder of children, adults, animals. We're talking 2,000 images and videos of kids getting raped.
I can't even. Have I talked on this podcast about how my brother found my dad's snuff film on our computer once?
No.
Okay, so my dad was a computer programmer in the 70s. He got a computer programming degree before they existed, basically. And then he's been in the industry since then, except for a short stint in the year 2000 when he moved up to run away from Y2K. He's mostly retired. He works for a Native American community in Washington State. I tried to give him a chance and build our relationship, but gross. So I didn't. So when we were teenagers, I'm the oldest out of 5, 4 years younger than my brother. We were homeschooling. My father had a computer because he's a computer programmer in the 80s and 90s. So we had like a 286, 386, 486 with a turbo button and all that noise. My brother, being the middle brother out of 5, decided to just go through my dad's shit, and he found my dad's porn stash. Now, this is pre-internet years, so it must have been like late 80s, early 90s, and he found a snuff film of a woman being shot in the stomach. Now, granted, if you can imagine the technology level, we're looking at highly grainy, near 8 millimeter, like, wouldn't be too hard to fake. But I have a very distinct memory of literally watching a woman getting shot in the stomach and dying in his porn folder. I don't know if I watched anything else because I wasn't allowed to masturbate as a Christian, and that was weird.
And that would have been mild compared to what this priest had.
It's pretty fucked up. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but there is the discussion about the ethical lines between owning, creating, and like, is it a sexuality to be turned on by gross shit?
Now, so this guy...
It's gross.
There was possession of child pornography, if it keeps you from offending, is probably...
Don't make a hard stance on it. Currently, this is definitely how I feel, too. Yeah, like,
it's creepy, but it's probably okay.
I'm willing to change my mind on it. I'm more willing for you to own porn than to create and reenact it.
That isn't like that. What was going on here. He had a lot of it. He was sharing a lot of it.
It's just, there's no way to talk about this without getting like the creepy crawlies in your skin.
Since this hit the news,
so freaky.
So far, 2 people have gone to prosecutors with allegations that he sexually abused them as children.
Well, I mean, that's the least surprising part of this, right? Like, the popularity of his crimes magnified the message so that people came out. Like, that's how it always happens with sex offenders. Everyone is shamed or whatever reasons they have, and definitely no victim blaming on our end. But the minute, that this shit becomes public, people are more likely to come out and be like, hey, and I don't know about you, but once multiple people start coming out and blaming people for shit, I got no problem assuming they're guilty.
Well, at the point that when it's one person that comes out, yeah, maybe.
I
when
understand
the second
why
one shows up,
I understand why we were reserved. Yes, always believe the victim, but everyone is definitely invested once it's 2 or 3 people.
Oh, yeah.
And the joke I was making about Bill Cosby was if 40 women came forward and said I was raping them, I'm definitely raping people. Worst case scenario, I just don't know that I'm doing it, but I'm definitely doing it. If 24 women come out and say that you're doing stuff, it's happening. Like, there's no scenario where that's not the truth. And we've got multiple
collusions that large fall apart very quickly.
Well, and why wouldn't they? The remote chances, and we know statistically this happens very infrequently, but even within the statistic probability of someone lying about this kind of stuff, she's not going to have women come behind her and agree. Yeah. Like, they're just not the case.
And this priest, he's got
he guilty.
All the videos, which
we know he had all the shit. Which is suspect.
When you have, and I would go even further on, if you possess child porn, you probably deserve a little bit, a much, much higher level of scrutiny to make sure, to see if you have actually offended. And he did.
I honestly feel you're a lot closer to being a child molester and you own child pornography than if you don't.
Yeah.
It's not the only red flag, but it's definitely the biggest one we've found.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Statistically speaking.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's so
the Venn
crazy.
diagram between people with child porn and people who molest children
is a lot bigger than the other one.
Overlaps almost completely.
What blew my mind on this one is the sexualization and victimization of infants. We have an infant, and I don't see it. I barely understand why you'd want to fuck a 16-year-old. I'm like, she's a child. I consider most college students to be children. Well, that's because they're dumbasses.
Well, that's all I need.
Anybody younger than me is a dumbass.
I don't care what kind of body you're driving around. If your brain is fucking a child's, you're a child. And but I honestly feel like this is the problem in trying to identify with child offenders like this, is we can't.
Yeah.
Like, I think there has to be something. Or there's a path for you to get there that you have to at least get partway there before you can see kids as sexy, because I can't see that from where I'm at. And I don't know.
Right. The best.
It's not mapped.
The best I've seen on it is it comes down to the way your brain's wired. If your brain is wired that way, it makes sense.
I think that's true with violent people getting off on violent stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of it's reinforced, but I mean,
violence and gore getting you off. To me, that's so alien, but that stuff exists.
But I think a lot of these problems exist because of our puritanical views on sex and how little information we have on it.
Yep.
I'm not saying that we should objectively be studying sex offenders, but it would be one hell of a way to figure out how they work. And we don't have that information because it's so and you should have a revulsion towards sex with children. That's disgusting. But we are making a judgment call. We just need to be honest about that while simultaneously allowing ourselves to gain information on it. Because in dealing with these offenses in the future, we would rather prevent as opposed to, because whatever reason, and I know we have our theories, but we need to stop having people in religious positions of powers who have these fascinations. Somehow. It's too fucked up.
And this is a guy that for 40 years, 50 years, a large portion of the Boise community trusted.
Too large.
With their children.
I'm having less patience in the last 10 years when we knew that priests were molesting children. Like, I'm not victim blaming, but it's got to be less surprising every time it comes out, right? Every time.
I think here is just people are shocked that it happened here. That in our backyard?
Yeah. You see, now that's LA, weird, too. Like, you think
New
you're
York,
better than Baltimore?
Boston.
Like,
sure, that happens all the time. But here?
But not in this city on the hundreds of miles away.
No, I think what makes this one interesting is it happened here, yes. He didn't get shuffled off to someplace else.
Yeah.
They left him here.
Well, that's
he was retired though.
They being the church even knew about it.
Yeah.
And he was retired, right, when they found out, so it's not
he's retired by 3-4 years.
Yeah, it's weird.
He hasn't been retired long.
He went through his whole career with that. Yeah, it's just...
He got away with it.
I sometimes wonder how often this conversation comes up specifically because of the hypocrisy inherent in his job description. Like, having worked in the prison, I understand the high percentage of sex offenders we have in our society. It's really high, you guys. It's super weird. But we don't talk about the other stories as much because if the manager of the Copy Max does that shit, it's less salacious, even though it's equally as disgusting, except for the manipulation and access to children, which, I mean...
You don't tell your children to go learn about how to be good people from the manager at Copy Max.
Right. But I mean, it doesn't take away anything from the crime. Yeah. I mean, like, it's the most horrific thing that we're just painting different colors based on how we feel about it. He's a gross child fucker, and that's weird to us. And yeah, we don't want him in the sandbox anymore. And it's his position. But this goes back to the core thing of religion having unnecessary power in our community. Like, these people will exist who knows how long in our species, but allowing them to have access to these opportunities to damage people and how we react to that is still kind of suspect.
Yeah. All right. Hopefully we won't have new things to talk about with this one until he's convicted.
Right? Well, maybe he'll come up again.
Because all news is bad news.
Because, well, yeah, it has...
Well, this kind of story, yeah, for sure, right?
Back in 2012, 2013, it was still news when there was a big bust on a Catholic priest.
Right.
It stopped being news. This one just is local, and there's the details.
Some of
the details that are getting reported are because he's actually being tried.
Good. Well, the Catholics just don't have anything to gain anymore by, I mean...
The church isn't involved.
Good. That's the way it should be. It's not a church crime. It has nothing to do with their religion.
Yeah.
It does, but not the way that we're talking about.
Well, okay, they are involved in that they're claiming they will help in any way they can with the state's investigation.
I believe that they will. I mean, if they were going to cover it up, they would have tried by now.
Yeah.
It's out
in the open.
I still believe most people in the church, and by most, I mean the vast majority of churchgoers, are good people who do fundamentally believe that child fucking is wrong and will be equally disgusted. If anything, more disgusted because it's their church. Yeah. I can't imagine how much more upset this is if this is your parish or your spiritual leader through part of your life. How much more personal is this for you if this guy that you trusted your whole life is this dude?
If you confessed your sins to this guy for the last 20 years...
That's a real issue.
Yeah.
And I can imagine the church would be incentivized to improve that relationship because quick and swift reaction to this reinforces that you give a shit as opposed to just people who aren't in your church. Right. Whereas covering up was very damaging to the church numerically because they did the opposite.
And I think we've also, at least in the U.S. as a society, we've moved past this is shocking that is happening. And we've moved past this isn't even news anymore because it happens all the time, to how the hell is this still happening?
I know, right? It is really bizarre. The fundamental issues underlying what causes these things have never been addressed. We get so focused on correcting and fixing and the behavior of people like the church when they're caught. We don't address what causes sex offenders to exist in their system.
Yeah.
They definitely aren't incentivized to, and we don't know enough about their culture. Even those of us who have been in it are not in it now, and it's difficult to fix it. I mean, the simple solutions would just not have those structures in place, but then that creates a vacuum.
Well, even when you look at it from the bigger culture, rape culture is a huge problem.
Oh, yeah.
Why does it exist?
Well, it's fundamentally broken as people.
What are the causes behind that? And how can we fix it? I don't think we've even gotten very far with that.
It's a long conversation that we don't have time for.
True.
Yeah, like, what is rape culture, Mikey? You have 5 seconds.
Yes, okay. Sorry about that.
No, it's great. We should do that later.
That should be its own.
Yeah.
Rape culture. Answer it. Go.
Okay, we're
out of time.
We're out of time. Yep. Mikey, thank you so much.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
And listeners, if you aren't a patron, what you just listened to would have been nearly twice as long if you were.
Yeah, we do a lot of extra stuff in my episodes.
And remember, not all those who wander are lost.
Baby might be.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Atheist Nomads. You can find show notes and contact information at atheistnomads.com. Follow us on Twitter at Atheist Nomads, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Atheist Nomads. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcatcher of choice, and while you're there, feel free to leave us a review. Theme music is courtesy of Sturdy Fred. Until next time, this has been the Atheist Nomads.